Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Fanalysis, Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm Retty4, this is GreyJedi91.
Hey guys.
And this is Antoine Bandelay.
Hello.
Take us away with the episode summary, Matt.
Alright, so this is Book 1, Episode 17, The Northern Air Temple. The gang hears a sort of storyteller talk about supposedly recent sightings of airbenders, and Aang, of course, gets excited about the possibility of running into his people again. So they head toward the Northern Air Temple to find that it has been renovated by newcomers who are not, in fact, airbenders. And there may be a more nefarious purpose to what's to these renovations than first meets the eye. So that's the basic summary of the episode.
When I was first rewatching it, I was thinking, "Oh, is he talking about? Is this like a tidbit or Easter egg for Guru Lahima?" But I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. There's actual like airwalkers because there's actually people there who've designed these like glider systems." And I was like, "Oh, it's not an Easter egg at all."
No.
Like I kind of sad.
Oh yeah, I definitely didn't get that much from it. Guru didn't enter into my mind at all. I was enjoying the kind of setup of the episode opener because it's kind of a new one for us. We've not really opened up into a story kind of description thus far. It's always been a panning shot down to a camp or a, jumping straight into the action or something like that. So it was a nice new opening for it, and I liked that it kind of set up the core of the optimism and hope in Aang for the episode's early scenes, because from moving on from this point we see him obviously excited for what he's expecting or hoping to see at the temple, despite his wariness in the face of what happened the last time he had this same hope up. I like that this kind of sets the tone for his kind of reminiscing about the airbenders and then thinking about the past, even though obviously it's not actually a story about the airbenders of the past. He just assumes it to be based on the context given.
Actually, it's pretty crazy to think about it. They had to coordinate their attacks pretty well to hit like the northern, south, western, and eastern air temples.
Crazy.
You know what I mean? Like all at the same time. It's like
it had to be with the Sozin's comet. Like there's no other way they could have done it. And even then, they'd have had to
right,
hunt down
exactly.
the airbenders
But I think it was crazy, like because they had to deal with all those temples, not just the one. Like, but it could. Thinking from Aang's perspective, he's only ever seen the southern air temple devastated. So like he could think, hey, maybe some of them survived.
Wait a minute. I just realized this. Back then, dragons weren't so rare. They might have ridden dragons up there and toasted some of them.
That's a good point.
I never thought about that.
That's a good point. I hadn't considered that.
Because Sozin's the one that started the tradition of killing dragons for the title of Dragon of the West, or you know what I mean?
Mayhaps they refused then to help, and that was what kind of set off the whole "we need to kill them" thing. That's also a possibility.
The dragons are, what did you have us do?
or no, we're not doing that. You can wait for the comet and do it yourself, kind of thing.
Right.
I haven't thought about that before.
It's just a theory. Like that never occurred to me.
May not have happened. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
But
so many stories
really
to be told.
short. I think it's one of the shorter ones that it gets us right into like the action episode, because usually those opening scenes are a little bit longer, but this one's like a few lines, and then it's like, okay, we understand what like Aang wants, and then they have Katara and Sokka have their conversation. I like the little comment that Sokka had about the difference between an optimist and a liar.
Yeah, it's
like,
you're basically just lying to yourself. It's another example. I keep bringing it up, but they keep doing it really early on in the episodes. How they immediately establish the kind of core of the characters. So people who come into the series, never having seen anything prior to it, get like a split-second sentence or single scene synopsis on who these people are supposed to be. Aang, the kind of hopeful person looking forward to seeing his history, Katara being the optimist, and Sokka the cynic, but not an uncaring cynic. They always hammer that in one scene at the start of pretty much every single episode.
Yeah.
Particularly this one, given the setup of the show. Or the story for this episode.
It's kind of like... I like the point, too, is like it's more like... what's that expression? Like many a truth said in jest. Like, he's kind of making fun of her, but at the same time, I think he probably does believe exactly that, Yeah. And it's not exactly... he's not exactly wrong,
Definitely, yeah. And that leads us into the first sort of shot of the temple we get, and the immediately sighting the gliders.
Which makes me sad now because it's totally gone thanks to the Red Lotus.
Yeah, completely gone. Well, it almost went with it in this episode, but we'll get to that later.
I know. I was like, oh my god, I forgot that it was going to be destroyed before.
Yeah. But the thing I liked about that was the fact that the first sight of the gliders, we got to see kind of a little bit of life to the temple. The previous temple we saw for this, it was just a lifeless husk, completely devoid of any motion or animation or anything. And in this one, we get the glider swooping around. You kind of catch that glimpse of what it could be, and we see that same reaction through Sokka and Katara. But then Aang's like, no, it's not airbenders. You can tell by the way they're gliding, and how kind of heartbreaking that is for him.
Well, and what he also says too, that got me, was him saying that they have no spirit, and it's obviously like, I mean, I guess maybe he doesn't see it yet because they're not so far away, but when they get closer too, like these people are like definitely having a good time and are actually, in a way, I would say, upholding, the life of the temple, because as you were saying before, the last temple he saw was dead. Like there was nothing there. There was no one there. I think not even, I think the bisons weren't there either. I think he mentioned that there's like no life there at all, that there used to be like lemurs and bison and stuff like that. But here, you have someone at least upholding some sort of life, within the temple, even if it's something that Aang, doesn't really agree with the way that they're manipulating it.
Yeah, it's the whole bittersweet nature of it. He's seeing life and movement in the temple that he remembers, but it's it's not the same. It's not what it was. It's while he comes later on and even very early on in the episode, really to kind of realize that the flying itself and the gliders do have that spirit of the airbender in them. The initial kind of disappointment of it not being actual airbenders, it kind of drives that that kind of sorrow in, and that kind of that sort of colors his response to the situation more than the actual information being given to him at first glance. Obviously, when we get to the tech side of the temple, that's a very different matter. But the gliders themselves, it's a resentment of what they're not, rather than what they represent in this moment.
Yeah, it was. He was looking forward to seeing his people again. Like it's like a hard thing to let go, even though he's been confronted by that at the start of the series. He's still having issues with it. You keep getting like the little spark of hope that doesn't pay off. That's hard. Very
hard, yeah. But they land, and we get the first introduction to the character of, before they land even, as they're landing, we get the introduction of the character Teo, gliding up on his air chair in very awesome fashion. I liked the cloud he leaves behind, air show style, forming the shape of Aang, because his first impression of Aang obviously is just, this kid is frowning. He's a frowny kid. I'll just paint a picture of it up in the sky. I like that was like a little jab there for someone who hadn't met him before, and for Aang, who usually puts forward this such a cheerful disposition, this is kind of Teo's first impression. It's like I like what that kind of says about how Aang's acting in this moment. It kind of makes him seem a bit more human, despite the fact it's just that one shot.
Yeah, and also the way when you put it that way, it's like Teo's acting the way he normally would act when like somebody shows up to be like the pessimistic, rain on your parade sort of person, the way Aang is right now.
And again, it's all understandable. This isn't Aang being harsh or bitter or anything. It's just that tinge of sorrow kind of coloring his resentment, his acknowledging the situation. Yeah, it's not until later on where his actual kind of umbrage takes root, and for obvious and understandable reasons. Because
it's pretty soon actually.
Yeah, because almost immediately after this scene, they kind of take him they walk into the temple to see the sights of the rest of the building, and we see the horrific destruction of. Well,
even before that, because Sokka gets we get a little bit of with Sokka too, because when he first sees Teo's like the way he's designed his air glider, he's like really, really fascinated by it, and Sokka being the non-bender is more into like pushing forward tech and that sort of a thing, and then for him to not combine with that, to sort of mesh with that, I felt like that was like a good bit to give Sokka something to do in the episode, and he does a lot in this episode in terms of that.
Yeah, we've seen his kind of scientific, practical sides come up every now and then in little blips here and there, but this is where kind of his innovative side really sort of shines out. His kind of the kind of way he thinks sideways around problems, solving many of the issues that come up later on. It's interesting for the fact that this kid kind of made history with his accidental invention, given what we know of what's to come later on in the series. And
but it is pretty terrible what they do inside the temple, though, because there's even like a mural that they like put a pipe right through, and it's like you don't want to do that though. Like that's literally, a little bit.
Yeah, they're literally like punching like a pipe, like a hole for the pipes to go through, like where the person's face would have been. Even you know, what I mean, it's as blatant as could possibly be.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where you completely get where Aang's coming from, because it's not just a case of I don't like the fact that you've changed it. No, it's not that. It's the fact that they have just, without any regard for history, for respecting the culture that used to be here, they've just wrecked, and they continue to wreck. And if the pipes were kind of moved around on the outside of the wall and through certain places, and everything had a bit more thought gone into it, it would be fine. But with the way presented as they are, we completely understand Aang's kind of irritation and outright kind of despair at the disrespect, given this kind of sacred place.
And it's interesting that when he says something like, this is supposed to be the history of my people, and you go, okay, an Airbender avatar can't have that many things, but like a cultural identity is one of them. You know what I mean? Like that's something that is a possession he's allowed, and it's it's one of the few things he has, and it's being trampled on.
Especially considering it is the only thing he has left of his people. It's not just a case of they're still thriving, they're still around. This is all he has, tying himself to his people and his past, and it's being wrecked for no reason at all. They could reroute the pipes; it's not a problem, or just not have them there entirely, as Aang is thinking.
I think it does end up making sense too, because once we find out later that Teo's father is like working for the Fire Nation, that the Fire Nation would be like, yeah, sure, put the pipes wherever you want, we don't care. And I feel like it's more of Teo and his friends who are more keeping the spirit of the Airbenders than his father is. Like I think his father, obviously, he's the one who's running things in this place, but it's the younger generation that's actually, I think, would be more respectful and is adhering more to like the life and energy of prior.
Absolutely, and there's no kind of malignance in him. I like the fact that you said Teo's father, because all we have for his name is the Machinist. There's no or Machinist. There's no name given to this character. He's just referred to as the father, which is interesting for Avatar. But yeah, he's not doing this deliberately. He just genuinely doesn't think about the culture and the history. He doesn't care. It's, well, we've got to make progress. He acknowledges that he can get carried away later on in the episode when he's remarked about it by Aang, but. There's no, it's not a case of I don't care. It's just a case of I genuinely didn't think about that. Sorry. You can imagine a conversation between Aang and him before they leave, where he's like, maybe tone it back, maybe, think about where you're putting these pipes and such, and the mechanisms and all that.
I think it's a little bit of a common trope too, like in fiction where you have your scientist or inventor who's like lost in the work and not thinking so much about like the consequences of it. That's a pretty common thing.
Yeah, and I mean, with him saying he gets carried away and such. I liked the introduction of the refugees' kind of history. Obviously only delivered in a few lines, but they kind of took the time to establish a bit of emotion from him when he describes Teo's mother, and kind of a little bit of a sniffle as he's describing the story. He can't bring himself to even say her name because of the pain and everything, and how it's attached to the fact that Teo's been injured and has lost the use of his legs. I like that they just quickly put that in there as a pocket of like a small story to kind of give you a backdrop for these two characters that we're going to need to kind of at least acknowledge and appreciate for this episode, especially considering they come up later, obviously, in the series. We don't get this great sprawling epic about them, but just a little bit of a nod to who these people are supposed to be, rather than just cardboard cutouts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I always like it when they show the impact of the war, which is like just looking at Teo, you could see that his whole life's been affected by it from the time he was a baby.
I mean, his whole temple exists the way it does because of the war, and not even to the modern day with the inventions and how they're being used. It's kind of an episode about that. I like how they tied it to their history as well.
Mm-hmm. I forget what's next. What's going on?
It's when Teo's father and Aang finally meet, and Aang gets angry, as he should, because they bulldoze a wall through, one of the sacred temple grounds, and he's like, "What are you doing here? Leave! Like this is like my people's place." And I also like there's a little bit in terms of just the production part, like they had a little echo effect going on, because that would make sense in like a grandiose like walled area where there will be an echo in the voice, so that was like a nice detail. But I also like what was going on too within the scene itself, the confrontation, and also, but again, I know you guys are kind of giving him you're kind of giving him credit because you know where he's coming from, but at the same time, like, he is being entirely disrespectful though. Like,
absolutely
bulldozing.
Absolutely. I'm just saying there's no
bulldozing
intent.
A wall.
Yeah, there's just no intent behind it. He's not doing it. Oh, let's destroy what was. He just doesn't care. He doesn't think. It's a case of he's sort of the type that as Matt said, lost in the work. Someone pointed out to him. He's like, oh yeah, you're probably right. I shouldn't be doing this, but he just didn't think about it before.
Yeah, he comes off that way at the start, but then as we find out, he is actually being made to do this. So some of this is like not exactly.
He just has
all
a quota
his idea.
to meet.
Yeah.
True. Although I don't think that probably extends to the bathhouse he was knocking through for. But
I mean, the guy definitely has like his own flaws, like the fact that he, sort of desecrated the place in the first place. But I feel like he would have reined it in a little bit if it wasn't compulsory. Like he has to do this for the Fire Nation, as we find out later.
Definitely. But that leads us to the kind of positive changes within the temple, or at least the kind of positive outlook from Sokka's side, because he obviously meets the inventor and sort of is fascinated by all of these designs. And I like the little tidbit actually with the candle o'clock, or rather O candle. It's 4 O candle. That idea is interesting because in world building, how people tell the time is often overlooked, because obviously, especially in a fantasy setting, there's no real method of doing it. It's always it's midday or it's past noon, or there's nothing. There's no specifics. This kind of gives an example of how that can work.
To me, it was like a little weird because the guy could tell the time before like the time telling device sparked.
Well, presumably because he knows where he put the trace amounts of snap kind of
because the
powder.
blocks, right?
The blocks. Yeah, he's like, so it's this block, which means when it's next snap, it'll be this time.
He literally said, Sokka said, like, the notches all look the same. How can you tell? Like, by looking at it. And then, like, 4 snaps. He goes, 4 snaps. So I go, well, but they didn't snap yet.
But he knows how many are left. So he knows that from the way it's burnt down, it's it's about to hit this next level of snap. And he's like, oh, look, it's now exactly the 4 snaps for a candle. So that's the way I looked at it anyway.
Okay.
Because unlike Sokka, he knows where it was before from the start.
The candle things were burning, but they're not.
I got the impression that it was a full like 24-hour kind of thing, and it was burning down. Sokka had no idea where it started, so he couldn't tell what
That's what I
rivulets
thought too,
meant.
but it doesn't actually do that in the animation. It's just the fire just sparks sometimes.
Okay.
I don't know. Like the nature of the conversation made it sound like it was in like an audible warning and not visual at all, so I didn't get it. But it doesn't matter. Like let's talk about this for the rest of the episode.
Fair enough. But yeah, I like the idea anyway. The fact that it had some sort of time telling mechanic. It was a cool little thing to capture Sokka's attention, and kind of open that window for bringing him into the workshop and having their sort of part of the story in the episode. Because I enjoyed the fact that Sokka was excited by all this, because he is that kind of forward thinking. The fact that he's not a bender, he has to find his own little sort of branch of magic in the more practical kind of elements of the world.
Yeah, what were the kind of things that the guy had made again? Like a knife sharpener that took 3 tries to get right?
Yeah.
He lost 3 fingers, and there's something else, but I can't remember what it was.
I can't
was it like an air balloon that he was trying to work on?
The air balloon is the obvious one,
Okay.
yeah. That was the big one that came up later in the episode. But there was another one that he mentioned that wasn't the knife thing, I can't recall. But regardless, after that kind of scene, they kind of move off on their own to check out the workshop and check out the gas room. We'll get to later. Aang is shown the rest of the temple by Teo, specifically brought to the sanctum.
Right, which I wasn't happy about this because it undoes my magic liking for these doors.
The idea that it had to be opened by Bin.
They didn't say how they opened it, but they got it open somehow. So you don't need to be a bender.
Probably use a machine or whatever is one of the inventions to do it. Because that's what Sokka was trying to do with the firebending stuff.
Unless he broke through from another wall, yeah, he could have just wrecked it and not gone through that door. I suppose.
I didn't think of it.
That's a possibility. And then it was just he only went from that direction because he realized the trap was set for the door. So I think
what Matt's about to say is that when he came straight to the door instead of through a wall. Yeah.
But that could just be a trap set in the room rather than the door itself. But it could be.
But I mean, the fact that the door opened and set the trap off or like the alarm off, I'm going okay. Yeah. What? Okay. But
it's a shame. Yeah. But I don't know how I feel about that. I'm happy with just being air manipulation that does it.
It's purely a personal preference thing. It's not like
It does kind of strip the magic of the room away, though. I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially considering we saw the Fire Temple one where the actual spiritual element came up and they couldn't open it because Roku was sealing it shut. There's that whole, but then it had mechanism on the back of the door then as well. So it's half and half for me. I could go either way depending on the situation.
The one thing I didn't understand was the whole gas problem and the thing that they were doing with the rotten eggs. What was the point of the rotten eggs, or what were they trying to do?
They were trying to fill the area with the smell of the rotten eggs, so when the gas left through the spot, they could use the smell of it to find the gas leak. Because obviously it's odorless gas.
Yeah, it's like used
as
the
gas is odorless. Okay, that's why. Okay,
it's used as an odorizer, which is like a real thing.
Yeah,
like a lot of this product, they don't have smells. So if you have a gas leak, it's like a safety thing, so that you don't just randomly blow up.
Where it's like, oh, do you smell the gas?
Yeah,
it's Usually you wouldn't,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why we do smell gas the way we do most of the time, because of that feature. Which I love the fact they just brought it in here. It was a cool bit of adding the science in. Even though it was just a case of randomly stumbling across it by accident, it's a fun moment in the episode. I also enjoyed after the Sanctum moment, because Aang refuses to open the door, and he's not quite there with Teo at this point, and recognizing the kind of spirit of the Airbender in this society. So he goes out, and they kind of look around the rest of the temple before Katara opts to try some of the flying, which I really liked that scene, because it hadn't really occurred to me that this is something that when gliders are a thing, they can try this. It's almost like, why didn't they try this before with Aang? Obviously, his glider isn't specifically designed for it, but it's something that you think, oh, this makes sense. Why wouldn't they try it? And I like that they kind of spent the time on the scene just showing the kind of joy of being able to fly like that.
Yeah, and I also like that too. That the way he was saying, like, to take the leap of faith, it was kind of playing into the whole spirit thing that Aang was talking about before, and it's that Teo and his friends do have the spirit because they do have the notion to just feel it, like just go out and do it, which is something that Katara was having trouble with initially.
And the fact that he specifically labels it spirit, Teo's like, there's this something, this instinct that lets you just fly.
It's just something you feel, man. Yeah.
And then he's like, you know what? It's spirit, and I think you do have it. I like that they kind of blended those two ideas together, and Katara was kind of the demonstration for it in progress, because she's never flown before. It's nice to see that kind of joy on a first time flyer.
Yeah, I totally would not do that. Sorry, Katara.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm like, with airbending, I'd do it in a heartbeat, but without, I'd be like, maybe not. Unless Aang was there to catch me, obviously.
Well, since Aang was there, maybe I would do it, because I'm like, okay, he'll save me or something.
Yeah. Definitely not.
See, I've never gone skydiving, but I think I will do that one day. It's like a bucket list thing. It seems like a cool thing, so I might have done it.
Yeah,
I might do it.
I also like the fact that we got a bit of a soccer moment with Katara at the end, where she's like, "Yeah, that was a fly," when she flies at the end.
Cool.
My favorite thing was that the horrible part. It was like she had no idea how to land it.
Yeah,
which they didn't actually show that, but like that's like the scary thing. It's like, okay, what do you do? How do I stop?
Yeah, it's I like that they kind of played it up for humor, because you don't get that many. Obviously, there's a lot of humor with Katara, but it's not kind of like the funny haha soccer moments with her. It's more like what she says or how she's acting to a certain situation.
It's rarely at her expense.
Yeah, that's the way of putting it. So I appreciated that for just that alone. It was one of those rare moments we get to see.
Mm-hmm.
But that leads Aang to finally accepting the idea that these gliders do have what it takes to have the airbending spirit, and that kind of leads them towards opening the door, which then
I'm okay with you now, Teo.
Yeah. No, I'm okay with you. I'm going to open the door for you. And I like that he was saying, you want to see what's inside? Let me go show you. It was kind of like a peace gesture. Not that they were really at each other's throats or anything, because they were both being perfectly cordial, especially Teo. But it was like, that was the moment where the bond kind of formed and they became kind of friends properly.
I think Aang started to see something of himself in him,
Yeah. And then obviously they go up to the door, they go to Sanctum, which triggers the trap, or the warning, and the Mechanist and Sokka join them. I liked how touching the moment was, because they didn't spend too much time on it, and it wasn't, a massively impactful scene, but for what we were given, I felt like you could see, the shame in the son towards the father, and his reaction to that and how it hurt. It was a lot of...
Yeah, especially because they're refugees because of the Fire Nation. For his father to be not working for them, it's like, what are we doing, Dad?
It's got that personal element, yeah. And at the same time, it makes sense for why he's doing it, because if he doesn't, they all get destroyed. He's not just, I'm going to serve the Fire Nation now because I care about science. It's a case of, I want to protect my son, I want to protect my people. It's a very human moment.
Yeah. I mean, I get where he's coming from with that, but I also like for a kids show that like the language that's used it doesn't dance around the issue too much. It's like another show that might be like more concerned with the kiddies or whatever might have found a different way to phrase it. But like the son's literally like, how can I be proud of you when your inventions are being used for murder?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Uses that word.
Oh yeah, the word murder.
Yeah, I like that. I like when shows don't find like used for destruction or for war or whatever, like something that sort of softens the blow. Yeah. It's your inventions are being used to kill people, innocents in many cases,
And like they did for us, it's again that personal element. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I love how they kind of tie that in. Yeah, because it never does dance around it in this show. It's nice to see.
I do want to say though that I don't want to be like nitpicky here, but like maybe it would have made sense to show like the fact that time was passing more, because as soon as they stumble on this, they're like, well, when is the Fire Nation coming? And he's like, oh, soon.
Yeah, right
Yeah.
now.
It's like this is like really convenient timing.
Yeah.
Is that like we had a standing arrangement for like the Fire Nation general to show up like in 2 minutes from when you find this room.
Yeah, what they needed was a transition with that snap candle again. So, soon, and then it fades towards the candle, and then it snaps, and then it blurs and goes down to lower the candle. Something like that, just telling us that time has
Or
passed.
people stressed out and pacing like, what are we going to do? We have a few days before they get here. Let's put a plan together, whatever. But I mean, it literally was just like, okay, reveal and now move on with the plot. And it's not very subtle.
Yeah, a bit jarring. And again, given the fact that it doesn't do it very often with this show, I mean, it usually is subtle, that kind of thing. It stands out more.
That's why it stands out.
Yeah.
Yeah, like much like the Great Divide. When stuff isn't great, it stands out. In this
There
show.
is a divide.
I also thought it was weird that the Fire Nation guy, like when he discovers the Avatar's there, his first thing is like, no, I'm going to destroy the temple instead of like bringing the Avatar in, like which seems to be the goal of every other Fire Nation person we've seen so far.
Probably not the most ambitious type who's like, okay, I'm just going to bring the temple down.
And is there a reason why they don't just like capture him too? Like they just kind of let him go back to like lead his forces. I know like Aang like hits him in the face with like airbending. Like get out of
yeah,
here.
I know.
Completely,
him, like, go
completely
back,
bitch slaps him with airbending. I was like, wait, what? Did that just
But, like,
happen? It's like,
But why doesn't he just knock him out and be like, hey, we've got your general, leave or
well, I mean, I
whatever.
didn't get the sense that this guy was a general. I kind of got the sense
I
that
did.
it was a messenger kind of.
He's clearly in
Well, 'cause
charge.
later
Oh
on,
yeah, he's got.
made-
I don't mean messenger by that. He's kind of the head of a convoy kind of thing. He's a person coming to just pick up the goods. I wouldn't have said he was a great general leader necessarily, just by his garb, if nothing else.
Okay,
But,
like
but it could go either way.
I
I
differ
suppose.
from you. I assumed he was what he was, but okay, yeah.
But
It's smooth.
either way, yeah, they could just capture him and not let him
Like,
go.
and that's he used the elevator system again too, so someone had to like let him down. I just realized. It's like,
Yeah,
why
let
did
me
you
just
guys
lower
let
this pulley for you. Otherwise, you don't know whether you have to go have help going down. It's just up, I suppose. But yeah, either way, it is a bit odd. But regardless of that, we then get the scene immediately after that where they kind of talk about how they're going to stop the attack, and talking about air superiority and how they're going to use the gliders to kind of fend them off with the advantage of the air. Which again, it kind of leads into what we know about the end of the episode, which I quite like.
That was another interesting thing. Is like when they were talking about like the innovations they made with Sokka's lid to the air balloon, and he was talking about their plan of attack, and he's like, we got 4 different kinds of bombs. We got smoke, slime, stink, and fire. It's like, why the fuck would you use fire bombs against the Fire Nation though? Like maybe don't use those.
That's gonna be fuel.
Well, I mean, it'd be useful against the non-benders, I suppose. But in practice, you don't want to be using them in like large scale.
To me, it's just asking for trouble. Like, that's just
Apart from anything else, they don't use anything but the slime for the actual war balloon. They only use the slime for that one.
Yeah.
So the variety was odd for him to list it in that specific moment. But yeah, the humor again in that scene I enjoyed. The whole if only we knew how to put a lid on hot air, and Katara mocking him.
That was good.
That was a funny line. But I also you recognise the fact that Sokka still hasn't kind of come to terms with the fact that Sokka is quite clever. She's like, that's really smart, Sokka,
okay.
and she's surprised. And it's like, I mean, he's shown a few sparks of brilliance before now. I think maybe stop being as surprised by this Katara.
I think it's because she's known him for so long that they probably balance out to like a 50-50 thing. Because yes, he just made a great innovation, and he's also the person that tried to get like a second fish hook like out like with like another one and got it stuck. Like so, like to her, 15 years of that is like it could go either way with my brother.
It's like Ron when he does something good. You're like, oh my god, Ron.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that's a good comparison, I suppose. Yeah. Just we just get so little of it with Ron compared to Sokka. It's not episode after episode with him, given the formats. But yeah, I get what you mean. It was just a funny moment as well because of the hot air. So many jokes you can make with that. But the battle itself, we've not missed anything, have we? We've not skipped over anything. We can just get to the battle now.
I think that's about right.
Yeah. Right after Sokka makes his little, amendment to the air balloon thing or hot air balloon. Yeah, then it's
kind of interesting. It's probably the first like battle really like with like Fire Nation ground
Many
force is like
people,
a whole
yeah.
platoon. Like I mean, yeah, we've seen Zhao in charge of like a blockade before, but that's about it. This is like a full Fire Nation force for the first time.
Yeah.
So the ones going up the mountain seem like they might be non-benders because they don't use any bending and they have spears or equipped with spears. It's not until we get the tanks that it's like, okay, that's where the Fire Nation's at.
Yeah, because we always lead with. It's strange in the Fire Nation, tactical doctrine is to send the spearmen up first. Though I suppose they weren't expecting much of a fight.
Right, they were just like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, a bunch of random refugees in a temple. Sure, yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, the entire actual kind of epic scale of this, because it's a small battle, but the way it's shot, the way they kind of pace it, the individual beats that come up, like you said, with the tanks and the rappel lines. They kind of make a big deal of making this as dynamic as possible. With the swooping shots of when the gliders pierce through the clouds and immediately see the infantrymen coming up the side ramps of the kind of the mountain. I like that kind of dynamic nature of the shots and how you feel like you're going in with them rather than just watching them from behind. They animated it well.
And they did a pretty good job of giving other people, everyone something to do. Like even Katara, she's not doing that much, but she's like hiding up in the clouds, to start off with, like handing more ammunition to people.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
The fact that she was up there behind the clouds, I was, yes, thank you. Subtle and small moment, but still great because they need that. It's the fact they put thought into the battlefield and how it was going to play out.
And she does get more directly involved later, like when
he
I don't
realizes
quite
that,
understand this. Like
the
why does
balancing of the water, I guess, in the tank, because the things can like revolve so that they're
so
never
like,
upside down.
right.
So I'm guessing that's the counterbalance.
So she's
the water.
freezing water inside of it to bust it apart. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, because the way it works is the water will flow around the exterior of the central kind of gear, and then so when it's tipping, it will flow back to the way the gravity is pushing it. But when it's frozen, it can't. So it's out of balance.
I mean, I like to think that maybe Teo's dad might have like said, I'm going to make you your machines, but when you guys attack the water tribe, you're fucked. Like maybe like putting in like an inbuilt weakness, something like that.
Well, I mean, that might be okay because right now their focus is on the Earth Kingdom, and the South is pretty much done with right now. So I think most of their tech would be like Earth related and not water.
You're right. I was trying to give the guy a redeeming
which is the reason why I don't think we see these tanks in the Northern Siege.
I think they do.
Oh, okay. If that's the case,
I feel like they do, but I feel like they make short work of them, like for this reason.
Right, and
because
like, okay, stop using those.
Katara's still pretty much an amateur, and she's like tearing the things up.
This is the largest scale ice manipulation we've seen from her as well. Given what we see in the next few episodes and how we have commented before how we don't really buy the aptitude with it. This is the first time we see
in the next episode. Yeah, she's pretty great, and it's like, well, when did that happen? But okay, I mean, it's still cool.
You do see like these small moments that do kind of add up to that. Just it's never a kind of full exploration of it. But yeah, the Soko Sagyoki tank like inspired things were just terrifying. The idea that they can rappel up and then Aang, you've just killed that. No, it's made it back because rappel up again. You do not want to be fighting those things in that kind of environment. I love the designs. But yeah, they fight off that that wave of the fight. Eventually the war balloon comes in and does next to nothing by itself. It was kind of an anticlimax on that one turning up. It dropped like 4 sludge bombs.
That's true.
Well, we're done.
Yeah, that is true.
Didn't really accomplish much, but again, Sokka's
it's still
Sokka's intelligence, kind of saves the day with him having picked up on the gas problem. It's like, oh wait, we found the gas is down there, natural deposit.
Seems like kind of a Hail Mary to me, though, because couldn't he just as easily have blown everything up by doing that?
Yeah, that's what I saw. That was one I mentioned earlier in this episode when I said about the temple being almost brought down in this very one, because the shot when the explosion goes off, I was like, oh, that could have gone badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking that too when that happened. I was like, that's not probably the best. Like, you could have killed everybody.
Yeah, that's a dangerous gamble there.
Maybe surrender. Maybe just surrender. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, whatever. I mean, it worked out. And it's interesting, like Antoine, you're always pointing out moments where you think people died. It's interesting that shot where they show like the dangling chains from like where the tanks would have been. I'm guessing people that were in like those tanks that got launched, God knows where, probably are jelly inside of those things. So they're probably dead.
The entire battle, you saw like avalanches being pulled down and stuff, and then people knocked over.
Sokka's body count though, because he kills combustion men inadvertently too.
Oh, yeah.
He does.
firebending killing motherfucker. Like he's got a high body.
He's probably got the highest body count of anyone actually, with the exception of Aang in the Northern Water Tribe.
I put that more on like the ocean spirit than him, but yeah.
But in terms of character, actual kill counts, yeah, you're right. I hadn't considered the scale of that. Obviously, I acknowledge the deaths because it's something that I keep counting whenever someone falls off a cliff, or when the Blue Spirit episode when they get knocked off the ladder. I'm like, oh, there's some broken bones, possibly some broken necks. They kind of as we said before, they don't dance around certain subjects, and while they can never show anything on screen, like we said with the previous episode with the burns from the fire. They can't show it happening, but they can imply it.
Until we get to Korra, when things get a little bit more badass.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so the episode it just kind of ends.
It's them
right?
celebrating that that they defeated the Fire Nation, that everything kind of worked out. But then they say, yeah, and then I feel like Tao's dad, he had like the sad face, and I was like, does he know that they are about to capture the air balloon now?
I think he's aware of what the victory means for the future, because we see this sad expression on his face immediately following the fact that the balloon's been flown off down the battlefield, and they were pulled from midair. He knows they're going to find that, and he knows that they can reverse engineer the tech, and that means, and specifically with the Firebender's traits of being able to control the temperature themselves. That's
they can audio themselves their own fuel.
Yeah,
and I feel like if that guy wasn't a general already, which I think he was, like he definitely when he brings this tech to Ozai, hey, look what I got. Yeah, I mean,
promotion.
Yeah,
he's going from captain straight upwards, definitely, if he's not already there. That's something, Zhao, I need to call him Zhao again, Jesus. Zhao, that's going to become a thing now.
His new name.
Yeah. Zhao, sends back speeches telling me I'm so amazing and wonderful, and I was like, what the hell? And then this guy walks in the room with the specifications for this dude.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, no, that's what I want. But yeah, and the episode ends without the gang. Actually, the final shot we see is the fire sigil kind of inflating with the balloon, and I love the kind of symbolism of that, because we don't see that again for 3 series, but it's right at the end of the show that comes back.
I mean, it makes sense because they need time to retrofit all that stuff and build out a lot.
They do kind of doesn't. Oh, I guess Zuko has one. Like when he finds them. Like when he leaves the Fire Nation.
Yeah, that's a small. They have a small scale, but it's still
in book 3. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Western Narrative, that's book 3. Yeah,
and it's post reveal, I think, because we see the airships at the end of the failed invasion, don't we? The Zeppelins.
Yes.
So I think that's after that we see the small version as well. I think I'd have to look back on it, but yeah, we'll find out when we get there, I suppose. But I just love the symbolism of it. How it was inflating. The Firebender's lost, but the sigils,
we'll be back.
Yeah, we'll be back. Find out next time on Avatar.
Right, it's one of those bomb endings, with the Fire Nation.
Especially when they are happy to, because they're like, we have air superiority. The Fire Nation will never have that.
It's like, nope, they're about to get air supremacy. But but that's the end of the episode. Any closing thoughts on this one?
It's a fun episode. It's not my favorite, but it's not that there's anything particularly wrong with it. It's just kind of, it's like an average episode of Avatar, which by general standards is still pretty good. It's just, I enjoy it sort of neutrally,
Yeah, this isn't the one you kind of look back on and go, oh, that's Avatar. It's just, one of those padded episodes that, while great by themselves, are just not, up with some of the legendary episodes that stick out in your mind. Same with me.
Right, yeah. It feels a lot more standard for sure.
Yeah, and you guys, I can't remember if you guys made the point last time we talked in the episode or just while we were talking, just, after the recording stopped, but it almost feels like this would have played better as like an episode that aired before the one we just watched, because The Deserter felt like a more natural lead-in to like the season finale, because it was more just impactful and serious.
That was just after we finished off the last one. It's definitely sits better there, I think.
This one literally could have played like anywhere in the show for me,
With the exception of the positioning of the map.
The location,
But even then, the Jeon thing could have come afterwards. There's nothing to say that town couldn't have been ahead of the air temple. Those could easily have switched.
It could have been an island or something, or whatever.
Yeah. We'll have to consider a repositioning of the episodes sometime on like a mini episode, Fanalysis Light or whatever, where we talk about the Star Wars film viewing order. There could be a new way of reviewing.
That'd be cool. I mean, I want to do that for our season review, like get our favorite episodes, and we could do that as well. Like talk about like what order we would have preferred them in, if we do prefer different order.
Yeah.
Or even just like general critiques if this is like an overarching thing like we thought.
Right,
you
which
know,
is like a season type thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, that's
so yeah,
this
that's
episode.
my
that's it.
Yeah, that wraps up this one. Look forward to more from the finale of this book when we go into like a full episode on this kind of thing. Post your comments down below, guys. Let us know what you think of the episode and anything we've missed, or you want to dive in and explore more on what we have covered. I'm ready for, and I still don't have an outro.
Great Jedi 91. See you guys later.
Antoine Bandelet, remember, be water, my friends.
Goodbye.